All right, this is a recap of the board town hall presentation today. Here we go. We're going to go through the reopening task force recommendations and then talk about how we're moving from one phase to the next. Introduce the idea of an implementation task force, and then I will kind of summarize the questions and discussion that we had after. So the guiding principles that the reopening task force used were to remember that we're part of an interdependent web, that we take risks and protective actions to protect everyone, not just ourselves, that the reopening process needs to keep in mind accessibility and inclusion for all members and friends, and that the recommendations are based on science. So the reopening phases first. When Franklin County is at a risk level of red, all church events are held virtually. That's what we're doing right now. SYC and Red Oak are in session with their safety procedures. When we move to orange, outdoor gatherings will be permitted, but only when SYC and Red Oak are not in session, so that we're not sharing parking lot facilities, these kinds of things. There will be a reservation process and a registration process, so if we need to do any contact tracing, we'll be prepared to do that. And then safety protocols must be followed. So for example, right now that would include 6 feet distancing and masking. When we move to yellow, outdoor gatherings are still permitted, and then small groups may meet indoors, again with reservation and registration protocols and safety precautions. There will also be cleaning procedures. When we hit green, all of those things can continue to happen, and worship and RE will resume. This will not be a return to how things were before we shut down last year. They will be a new kind of way of being together that includes safety protocols and accessibility for people who can't return to the building, these sorts of things. Okay, the behavior covenant is still in rough draft form. It has not gone through the approval process yet, but this is a kind of an idea of what it will be. We will acknowledge that we are cherishing the health and safety of the congregation, and that is the priority over the privileges of an individual. That is how we operate in a pandemic to keep everyone well. So the central theme of the covenant is respect for ourselves, for others, and for the spaces we occupy together. And these are the things that we will agree to. Attempt to understand the shifts in standards, expectations, and norms necessitated by the pandemic. Accept that those things are based on science, that the knowledge is ever evolving, and so what we are asking ourselves to do and what we're asking others to do may change as the science changes. And that our risks and protective actions affect every person that we share time and space with at church, and that we are assuming the best intentions of other members. If a person is behaving out of covenant, we are hoping that you'll be able to address that directly in the moment, or if you need to address it after the fact, but directly if possible. If a conflict arises that can't be resolved privately, our healthy relations policy says that you notify Isabel Call or Reverend Marion Stewart. So to move between phases, first Franklin County will confirm that we're at our new level, so we've moved from red to orange. Coordinating team will confirm that staff and programs are ready for the next phase, so they know what the registration process is. They know how to reserve time. We've got a system set up for that. We know what the checklists are to make sure that we understand how the bathrooms are going to work. These kinds of things, that is all in place. And then the board will vote to enter the next phase and will notify the congregation. If we should need to move backwards, say from yellow back to orange, that will happen immediately upon the Franklin County Board of Health announcing that change. So staff will immediately pivot back to the previous phase. We don't need a board vote, we just do it. So the next thing that the board is focused on is an implementation task force. To create these procedures and checklists for yellow and orange, we need to decide when we have outdoor gatherings, can people go inside to use the bathroom? If so, can more than one person be in there at a time? What kinds of things need to be cleaned if that happens? Who needs to be notified? Because we are sharing that space with schools, and they have been doing a great job of keeping the facilities clean, and we need to make sure that if we're adding people to that building, that we are keeping it as clean for them as they have been already keeping it. So we're looking for a few people to help develop those things for yellow and orange phases. Probably no more than 3 or 4 people. We will also have a liaison from the board, from staff, and David Carr will be available to help answer any questions you might have of the reopening task force. So we're hoping for a quick turnaround on this, no more than 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're interested in volunteering, you can email us at the board. Planning for the green, like RE and worship back in service, is a much bigger undertaking that's going to involve welcome team and worship team and RE, and that is a separate project. So that is not the board's focus right now, because we're not going to get to green until we have moved through orange and yellow. The questions primarily revolved around vaccination, and if we have a higher vaccination rate than is recommended, can we come back sooner? Can people who are vaccinated gather before we enter the orange or yellow phase? And these are conversations that the task force, the reopening task force, hadn't really addressed because their work was done in December and January, and we didn't know what the vaccination timeline was going to be then. So this is a conversation that the board will have this week and will continue to have, and we will keep you informed about that. So the last thing that I asked people at the town hall was to let us know how you feel about these recommendations and these processes. Oftentimes we hear from people who disagree, and we don't know how many people agree. It is our job to represent the congregation, and so we need to hear from all of you how you feel. And if you're comfortable with this process, what questions you have, what thoughts you have, and of course, if you want to help with the implementation task force, we would love to know that too. That's all. Thanks.